All right, welcome back to Vancouver Hockey's The Healthy Scratch podcast. I'm back in the press box with my boy Jacob Fraser. Jacob, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. You know, it's been a really busy road trip here for Vancouver. Last time we talked post Ottawa game. We're now right after a big win in Buffalo, where again the Canucks almost blow a 3-1 lead in the third period. It's been really an interesting trip. Kind of a two games with very different endings. In Boston, a game we should have should have lost, and Kevin Lankinen stands on his head, and then we go to Pittsburgh, kind of a 180. Felt like probably should have won that game. Goaltending wasn't the best. Defensive zone coverage wasn't the best. What are you thinking about this road trip so far, Jake?
Yeah, I think going into it, we had talked about last week how they should be able to run through a few teams here. They obviously got the win in Boston, which was pretty big. It's a tough building for the Canucks to win in, especially in the last 10 years or so. So I I was happy with the effort there. Obviously, Boston controlled most of that game, but getting the 2-0 win, that's huge with the empty netter, basically a 1-0 win. That's a huge win, and you got to win games like that. Sometimes is a really boring game to watch, but sometimes that's how you have to win. Obviously super disappointed with the first half of the Pittsburgh game, like going down 5-1 to a team like that. And that team, they almost blew that huge 5-1 lead. I was really happy with the effort and the comeback there, but yeah, it was you had to know they were going to come out like that just because you had a hard game the night before in Boston, but you obviously don't want it to go on as long as it did. Like I felt like it was 30 minutes of that game we were getting dominated by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then they decided to wake up after that fifth goal against.
Yeah, you can't start that late into a game, right? Like you're not even a team like Pittsburgh who's been struggling on the year, you're not going to be able to come back and beat them. Um, even yeah, Sidney Crosby isn't quite what he used to be. He had some great plays there. And speaking of Sidney Crosby, it's very likely the captain at the Four Nations Cup coming up with rosters being announced on Wednesday. We had our first guest on the pod. We had Noah Strang from the Daily Hive come in and talk to us about all things Canucks, couple of rumors, and specifically about some Four Nations picks and what Canucks might make the roster.
Yeah, we obviously talked about Elias Pettersson, whether or not he'd be that number one centerman. I think he will be. Mika Zibanejad just hasn't been very good this year. Um, but yeah, there's a few other names that could make the roster. I mean, we just talked about one of them having an unbelievable game in Boston. It's Kevin Lankinen. I think Kevin Lankinen could be the number two goalie for the Finnish team. Like you're looking at the Finnish goalies in the NHL. You've only got UC Saros, and then it's who the Canucks just played today, Pekka Luukkonen from Buffalo, Korpisalo in Boston, Joel Bloomquist in Pittsburgh, Ville Husso in Detroit. Like there's not a lot of high caliber goalies outside of UC Saros. I really think with the way Lankinen's played this year, he's the number two.
I agree with you 100%. He's been outstanding and it's consistent too. What has he had? One bad game?
Yeah,
The
pretty
game in
much.
Buffalo he just
Yeah.
had was incredible. That save on Tage Thompson in overtime, sticking out his toe as Thompson uses his long reach to go to the backhand. He's been unreal. What a couple of interesting conversations though about Canucks making those teams. What about JT Miller, who's been out for a long time, or Brock Besser for the Americans?
Yeah, we talked to Noah a little bit about Miller. Obviously, like it's such a difficult situation. What he's going through, you just hope that he takes the time he needs and gets back to hockey when he's ready. But I think they leave him on the roster for now. I mean, it's not like the rosters are completely locked in and they can't, if the guy's not ready to go, they can't just take him off the team and replace him. Like, so I'd say with the way he's been playing this year, leading up to his leave of absence, I'd have him on the roster. And what he can bring to that American team is something that they don't have a ton of outside of maybe the Canucks, like that grit. The Americans historically don't have a ton of that grit, especially up front. And Besser, I mean, if you have Miller, Besser's the perfect winger for him. They've worked so well together in Vancouver, and chemistry sometimes can be hard to come by. It can be hard to gel in these quick little tournaments, right? So having that built-in chemistry on a roster can be super beneficial and can be the reason why, be the thing that puts you over the hump over the rest of the teams. I mean, there's so much skill obviously on all these teams. So having that built-in chemistry going into the tournament can really give you an advantage over everyone else.
100%. I think we saw that with Team Canada back in the day when Chris Kunitz made Team Canada out of anyone just to play with Sidney Crosby, and it worked. He scored in the gold medal game. So that would be an interesting thing to pay attention to. We know Quinn Hughes is obviously a lock.
Of course.
How about another elephant in the room, Thatcher Demko?
Yeah, that is a tough one for me just because he's missed so much time, and who knows how he's going to be. I mean, he's Thatcher Demko. He's going to be a great goaltender, but who knows how long it's going to take him to get up to speed. With how Connor Hellebuck's been, I think Connor Hellebuck, is the lock for the number one goaltender there. And then Jake Ottinger in Dallas, he's had a good year. He's such a great goaltender. But you look at that number 3 spot, and Jeremy Swayman was looking like, or coming into the year with Demko's injury, it was looking like that was going to be the clear and obvious number 3, but he has not been good in Boston this year. So, I mean, I'd love to see Demko there. Demko, by the tournament's end of January, Demko will be back up to speed by then, assuming there aren't any setbacks with his injuries and stuff. But so I think he should make the team, but maybe you just give him the extra break. I mean, I wouldn't mind that, as let the Canucks let him have a break for the season with the Canucks. Like that never can hurt Thatcher Demko. So maybe they go with Dustin Wolf. He's had a really good year in Calgary. Charlie Lindgren, I know he buried on his own net. I think it was 2 nights ago now against Tampa Bay. But he's been pretty solid for Washington this year. So yeah, there's a few other names that might make the team, but I don't think, if you're looking for the 3 best American goalies, Thatcher Demko is one of the 3 best for sure.
Maybe Swayman can pick it up if he gets a sick Bentley deal, like Zadorov. Never know, right? Or maybe he'll just be driving off after a loss in style as well. Anyway, we talked to Noah Strang about all of those picks that we just talked about, as well as a couple of interesting things. Some trade rumors with JT Miller potentially going back to the New York Rangers, and what the Canucks should do about Filip Hronek's injury. All right, we are here with Noah Strang from the Daily Hive. Noah, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Noah, I want to just kind of jump right into it, if that's okay with you.
That sounds great.
I saw after the game today, you tweeted about how Nils Hoglander only played 6.5 minutes of ice time. How imminent is a trade looking at this point with Filip Hronek out and needing that help on the right side of our decor? How imminent is a move looking for Nils Hoglander?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting now. We've heard a couple of different reports of the Canucks aggressively scavenging the trade market for defensemen, and now there's reports kind of coming out of the other side of how much other teams are interested in Nils Hoglander. He does kind of seem like the odd man out at the moment. Like you said, he only played 6.5 minutes today. That was a career low, I believe, in ice time. And I'm pretty sure that's 4 consecutive games now that he's played under 10 minutes. So there's obviously a disconnect there, whether it's in the coaching staff trusting him or what's going on. I mean, it's hard to say how imminent a trade is, as I'm not privy to all the details there, but a lot of the signs that we're seeing right now are similar to past years where eventually the player that was in the situation was dealt.
No, I saw another tweet. You're tweeting about how the Rangers are struggling again today in Philadelphia. Couple of rumblings about JT Miller maybe reuniting with the Rangers. What have you heard on that?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of similar things to what's out there publicly that other reporters have been reporting. So I saw the Rangers reporter at The Athletic. His name escapes me right now, but he reported that the Rangers reached out to the Canucks to inquire about possibly trading for JT Miller, and apparently other teams have as well. I would be surprised to see the Canucks move on from Miller at this point. I mean, obviously he's away on leave right now, and I think everyone just wants to make sure that he's okay. First of all, the hockey part kind of comes second, but he is expected to return at some point. And when he does, he's such a key part of this Canucks team, not only about what they want to achieve on the ice, but also as an emotional leader. He really sets the tone in a lot of ways. And for a team that has hopes of contending like the Canucks, it would be a very, very difficult hole to replace.
Kind of going back to Filip Hronek being out. Do you have any idea of what a timeline may be for his injury?
I don't know any specifics right now about details on his injury. From what's kind of being put out there, I mean, it sounds significant. It doesn't sound like he's going to be back next week or even in 2 weeks. From some of the things that I've been hearing and reading, we're maybe looking around 6 weeks, but that's at this point still very much a guess from people. We'll wait to see what the team puts out and what details are revealed in the future, but it's not like he's going to be playing for the Canucks anytime soon, I would expect.
So if that's the case, where do you think the team kind of goes from here? It's been difficult to trust Desharnais playing any big time minutes. Where do you think they go from here?
For sure. I mean, you look at the decor that they iced today in their game against the Sabres, and it's not one that inspires a lot of confidence. I know that they got the 2 points against the Sabres, but you think about icing that decor on a nightly basis over potentially a month, potentially even longer. It's not something that you want to do as a contending team, especially since it's not like last season where the Canucks got out such a hot start that they built themselves kind of a cushion for sitting in the playoffs. I mean, this season, it's still very early, but they're still kind of in that middle ground in the division. And so I think that it does add pressure to Alvin and Rutherford to go out and find another defenseman. And if we've learned anything since they've come to Vancouver, it's that they're willing to be aggressive. They're willing to make trades. They're not going to sit on their hands and wait for something to happen. They're going to go out and make it happen. So I think that's why it's an exciting team to cover always. They're always looking to make a move, and we could see another one soon.
I got a fun one. So I saw a tweet. Everyone's kind of talking about the NHL potentially announcing quarter century teams next season. I saw who your first line was, and there's a good consensus kind of around that. There's a couple of people saying Pavel Bure. We're like, guys, it's quarter century. Like, come on. But who would be like your second line and your second D pair?
Right, yeah, it's interesting. For people that haven't seen, I think my first line was the Sedins and Naslund as the forward group, and the D pairing was Oland and Hughes, and the goalie was Luongo. I think some of the players that I considered for the first team that would then probably be on the second team, I mean, I think the hardest pick for me was Oland as that kind of second defenseman. There were a couple other names there that I was considering, chiefly probably Edler because of his longevity with the franchise, potentially someone like BX too. And so off the top of my head, that might be what would make up the second pairing if I were to make another group of six. Up forward, there are a lot of interesting names too. I think Ryan Kessler would be one that I'd be willing to put in there. I mean, he scored 40 goals, won the Selke Trophy, was a emotional leader of the team. And then you're probably looking at one of the current stars on the team. I mean, maybe JT Miller could get in there. I mean, he will as time goes on for sure. It's just if it's too soon right now. And for one more forward, I mean, there's a lot of interesting names. You could go a lot of different directions. I think I would look at I'd have to look at the numbers to really think of someone else, but maybe like Todd Bertuzzi comes to mind. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's a crazy pick, but we'll see.
I don't think so.
And in net, I mean, the Canucks have had pretty solid goaltending for like the last decade, luckily, but a lot of people like have moved on relatively quickly. I think if Demko had stayed healthy for the past 12 months now, he could probably have his name in there, but without that, I mean, yeah, maybe he still gets it. I'd have to look back.
Well, it can't be Dan Cloutier. I don't
Cannot
think
be
you-
Dan Cloutier, that's for sure. I mean, those pre-Luongo years had some rough picks for the goaltending. So
On the topic of goaltending, I think for the Four Nations face-off coming up, Team Canada obviously lacks a lot of that high caliber goaltending. Who would be your 3 picks going into that tournament for Canada?
yeah, I mean, I think that's like the biggest question mark for Team Canada that everyone has, right? Is the goaltending, especially when you compare it to some of the other elite teams in this tournament. Like Canada, probably on paper, has got the worst goaltending of all the teams heading into this tournament. I think Jordan Binnington would be one of my picks for sure as the goalie for this tournament. And I also think Aiden Hill, I saw a report that those two were kind of penciled in to be 2 of the 3 spots. And I think that's pretty logical. The third position, like the third goalie, there's again a lot of options out there. I did like a little mock team and I had Logan Thompson, who's had a really hot start to this season, but I could see arguments for a variety of players. I know even Cam Talbot has had a hot start. He's got a strong save percentage this year. Montembeault in Montreal, there's been people that are really pushing for him. Of course, Stuart Skinner in Edmonton hasn't had a great start this year, but he's had runs, and all you need is someone kind of that can get 2 weeks of hot play. So I think it'll be interesting to see who they choose, and obviously those rosters are coming out really soon. So it's a really exciting time for the hockey world to just get a glimpse of best on best action coming back.
For the Swedish team, do you think Elias Pettersson is looking like he's the number 1 center there?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't obviously picked in those first 5 players that they released for each team last season. And I know that they picked Zibanejad, I want to say, right? So Zibanejad has not been all that great this year. So, I mean, the great thing about these teams with so much talent is they'll probably have like 2 first lines kind of, you know, and they'll be able to play both of them. But Pettersson should have a huge role in that team Sweden. I mean, he's been playing really well for the Canucks as of late. And when he's on his game, he's one of the best centers in the world. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be playing at that level for Sweden in the springtime.
Going to Team USA, I'm wondering if you think there's a chance that JT Miller doesn't make that team because of his personal leave at the moment. Like, is there a world where he's not listed on that roster, or do you think they would add him to the roster and then if he's not ready to go, add like someone closer to the date of the tournament?
It's impossible to say. I mean, I don't know like exactly the situation that JT's in, and I don't really want to speculate. I don't know any kind of timeline for what's going on, so it's really difficult to say how that whole situation is going to unfold. I think everyone just wants JT to get through whatever he's going through, and if that takes until then I'm sure everyone will be supportive of it, and whatever he needs kind of to get back to where he wants to be. So it's hard to say, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Noah for coming on our show. We're going to have him back to talk more Canucks with you guys. Busy week coming up. We got a game on Sunday against Detroit, and then on Tuesday against a very solid Minnesota Wild team with Kirill Kaprizov really going off and having a career year right now. Jacob, out of the 2 games left, how many points do you think is viable for the Canucks?
I want to say 2, because I don't know if they can get it done against Minnesota, especially at the end of a long road trip and with the right side of our defense looking the way it does. But those morning games in Detroit have not been good for the Canucks recently either. So I'd say it'd be good to get 2 out of this last couple games on the road trip, but I'm not confident in 2.
Yeah, I think that would be probably the best situation. Just splitting one of those 2 games, get home, get some rest, hopefully heal up a little bit. Doesn't sound like Hronek will be ready, but heal up a little bit, get ready to go. Maybe there's a trade made by that point.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Healthy Scratches, joining us in the press box. We will be back next Friday, and we will have some more information, and maybe we'll have a new defenseman to talk about. But anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you in the next one.